Good morning, you beautiful bunch of fuckers, and welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It's Wednesday, December 3rd. It's time for Destination Health. Phone lines are open. Jump in and join me. I do have a lot I want to talk about today, but I also want to get to a lot of calls. We've got 3 hours, so I'm going to get right to it. Phone lines are open, 855-950-3835. I've got a bunch of little odds and ends. I think I'll cover some of these, and then I'll talk about some of the bigger things going on. Why does my mic sound so hot? There we go. Maybe that's a little better. All right. Where do I want to start? Let's start with this one. Let me go find this article. I think I see, that might be Bruce calling in. Bruce might co-host with me today. Who knows? We might have a little fun with that. Where was that article? It's amazing to me that when I read these types of articles, anything about health, the answer is always something that's going to either not fix the problem at all, or most of the time actually make the problem worse. All right, I have a question. If you are in the chat room, you could answer this question. We could take a little poll. If you're not in the chat room, you could join the chat room if you're a member. Looks like people are starting to straggle in. It's letstrucktribe.com. And if you're a member at any level on letstrucktribe.com, you do have access to watch the video live stream and be in the chat room itself. So here's my question. This is a serious question now. This was the headline of the article. How old is too old to shovel snow? What a stupid question. And yet they wrote an entire article about this. Now, I get it. Some people should not be shoveling snow. It really doesn't have a whole lot to do with age. I know 18-year-olds who should not be shoveling snow. Myself, at 62, I enjoy shoveling snow. I don't have to do it that often, once or twice a year. Some winters I don't think I shoveled any snow at all last winter. The winter before that, I think I shoveled a lot. Big, heavy, wet snow, too. That's what we get. When we do get snow, it tends to be about 30 or 31 degrees, and it bounces back and forth sometimes from rain to snow. So we get heavy, wet snow and ice, which is really difficult to shovel. But it's a really good workout. Not once have I ever thought to myself, oh, you're going to have a heart attack, which is what they're mostly concerned about. There was a study I read, cold-related deaths are roughly double the rate of heat-related cardiovascular events, especially in male patients above 65. Now, listen to this. Franklin, who was one of the doctors in this study, said Franklin previously advised a younger age cutoff. He has said that anyone over age 45 should avoid shoveling snow. But this is based on a recommendation from a study which found that about 85% of adults over the age of 50 already experienced atherosclerosis, which can lead to coronary artery disease, which is why I said there are a lot of people who should not be shoveling snow, including some very young people who are just in horrible metabolic condition. On the other hand, I'm wondering how much snow I might be shoveling in my 90s. That's my goal, to be shoveling snow right up till the day the lightning bolt takes me off the planet. The idea that we're going to tell, and maybe it's good advice that most 45 and older people should not be shoveling snow. But is that really the answer? Isn't the answer you're really metabolically sick and you should get healthier? Let me see if we had any answers. Max, I like it, Max. Max says you should think about stopping shoveling snow when you hit 100. Max, I'm with you on that one. Jeff says there are obese 12-year-olds that shouldn't be shoveling snow. Jerry says when I get to 150, I'll let the youngsters do it. Yeah, I like that attitude. Instead, the medical advice is if you're over 45, stop shoveling snow. It just makes me a little crazy. All right, what else did I have on the odds and ends here? I told this yesterday on Coffee with Kevin. I'm going to tell it again today, though. Any of you that have heard me talk about the book Overdiagnosed, and if you haven't heard me talk about the book, I haven't talked about it in a while. I read it years ago. I reference it all the time. I recommend reading it or listening to it. I'm pretty sure it's available on audio. The whole idea behind the book was to talk about the dangers of medical screenings. Now, let me clarify what screening means. Screening is not the same as testing. I am all for good medical testing. In medical testing, we are looking for markers that would show we have a problem. That could be a nutrient deficiency. It could be a toxin overload. It could be metabolic markers. We can test to figure out if our health is optimal, and if not, what's causing it not to be optimal. That's testing, and we do it for very specific reasons. Screening is just a system that has been created that they make a lot of money on. It's very, very profitable. Here's the definition of screening. Looking for a medical problem when you have no symptoms of that problem whatsoever. The most pervasive screening is cancer screening. So mammograms, which are a really, really bad idea. I'm going to get blasted. Some woman or man is going to send me an email. You're going to kill people if you tell them to stop getting mammograms. No, I'm not. There's tons and tons of evidence to support this. Mammograms could be causing far more damage than they've ever helped. But somebody has a story. Oh, but my wife, my sister-in-law, my mother, my daughter got a screening and they found breast cancer and she's alive today because of that. No, there's no proof of that. The book can explain it way better than I can. It's a much more complicated, nuanced, one of my favorite words now, nuanced topic. And really, mammograms are a bad idea. But screening in general, just going and looking for a problem when we have no symptoms. For males, the biggest one is prostate. For everybody, here's a big one, colonoscopies. What are we advised to get those in our 40s and 50s every year, every couple of years now? Horrible procedure, by the way. It is dangerous. They really downplay the dangers of colonoscopies. You don't hear those stories. Now, I'm going to tell you one of the stories. This story reminds me a lot of the, if you remember the Dr. Dwayne Graveline story about the statins and his experience, and he's a flight surgeon, by the way. He also has several good books, although he's dead now. And his widow still believes that he died from statins. He had horrible reactions to statins twice. One of the books he wrote was called Lipitor, which is a statin, thief of memory. Statins are known to cause total amnesia. And he had it twice. He ended up in the emergency room with total amnesia. Once he reverted back to when he was 13 years old. He could remember everything up until the time he was 13, nothing after that. The scary part was he's a pilot. He said if that would have occurred while I was flying, I would have crashed the plane because I wouldn't know how to fly it anymore. He went through 2 bouts of it, and both times they linked it back to the statins. And then he ultimately died, and his widow believes it really was caused by the statins. This story is similar because it's a doctor. It's a doctor who went in to get his annual, or whatever the schedule is, colonoscopy. Many times in colonoscopies, they find polyps. Polyps are like little skin tags in your intestine, in your colon. For the most part, they're harmless. They can be cancerous. If you were worried about them being cancerous, the test I would tell you take would be a stool test. There is a pretty decent stool test for colon cancer. I prefer not to screen at all, period, for lots of reasons. If you want to know what they are, you can call me. I could spend all day on that alone. So they found polyps. I think if I remember the story right, 2 small ones, 1 sort of large one. Well, the scope that they use to do the colonoscopies is also capable of just cutting out the polyp, just a little snip. Imagine if you had a skin tag and you took a pair of nail clippers and you just clipped off the skin tag. That's basically what they're doing to polyps during a colonoscopy. So they did that, and he was recovering that day. It's not a big deal if nothing goes wrong, except he started pooping blood. Now, a little bit after a colonoscopy, especially if they take out polyps, can be common. But as a doctor, he realized pretty quickly this is becoming more than a little bit. And it got so bad, he went to the emergency room. They put him in a bed and they were monitoring him, but he was realizing he was losing a lot of blood. And the procedure at that point should be that they collect and measure the blood so they know how much you've lost. And he realized nobody was doing that. Now, he's a doctor, so he started asking, why aren't you doing this? They just kept putting him off. And then he started asking his doctor, I'm starting to feel the effects of the blood loss. I think I could use a transfusion or some platelets. And they kept putting him off. And eventually he became delirious and showed severe signs of blood loss. And they realized he had lost over 50% of his blood and almost died. It was caused by internal bleeding. When they clipped one of the polyps, they clipped an artery, and he was bleeding, and he would have bled out and died. He almost did. Now, here's the worst part. He didn't die, but the damage by having such a extensive blood loss damaged his heart, his liver, and his kidneys. He had to sell his practice and retire, and he'll die early. So this will kill him. And he's debilitated to the point where he can't do much over a colonoscopy. They don't talk about those stories. If you read the book, those kind of stories are common. If you're a man and you read the book about prostate exams and biopsies and the dangers, the damage that can be caused by those, yeah, no sex the rest of your life. You'll be incontinent. You'll be wearing adult diapers just from the screenings can cause those things. The other big danger to screenings nobody wants to talk about is false positives. You go for a screening and they tell you you're positive for cancer. Do you know how much stress that causes? Then you go through more and more procedures because that's how they make the money. This is why they offer a lot of these screenings free. Oh, come in for your free screening. Because they know They're getting you into the system, and they're going to make a lot of money off of you. So we could talk about that today. Here's one more. GLP-1s. I've been talking about these for a long, long time. There's plenty to talk about. The side effects of these drugs are horrendous. Here's the worst part of these drugs. This might surprise you. The worst part of these drugs is they work. They help people lose a lot of weight. You can see it. There's a bunch of celebrities and people who have not lost weight in the last 20 years, and all of a sudden they're skinny. Now, one of two things happened. They either went very strict keto carnivore, which I doubt, some of them maybe, or they're on GLP-1 drugs, which is far more likely. Usually I can tell the difference by looking at them. You can see the difference. Both groups will lose weight. One looks healthier than ever, and the other group looks sickly most of the time. But here's one of the big, big dangers of GLP-1 drugs that you're not hearing a lot about. It's muscle wasting. Not a lot of the weight they are losing is muscle mass. That does not happen on keto carnivore type diets. There is very, very little muscle wasting in keto carnivore diets. And the little bit that can occur usually is because you might be doing it wrong and it's easy to fix. With the GLP-1 drugs, there is significant muscle wasting. The danger of that, especially as you get older, is you lose strength. You get very weak. You won't be opening the pickle jar. You won't be shoveling snow. You are far more likely to fall and injure yourself. And that is the beginning of the end for older people. Getting weak and breaking bones is the beginning of the end. And it's not a pretty picture. So one more list to a very, very long list of problems with GLP-1 drugs. And like I said, the biggest problem is they work. So people will keep using them. They're also already developing more and more powerful weight loss drugs. They're not necessarily GLP-1. We already have a bunch of those. GLP stands for glucagon-like peptide. That is it's a small part of a protein. It acts like a hormone. It regulates our hunger and satiety. So we know that works, but there are other hormones that also affect appetite and weight loss. And now they're starting to develop drugs to mess with those hormones. There are some drugs on the market already that affect two different hormones, and they're working on more. The more hormones they affect, the more weight you will lose, the more damage you're going to do to your body. This is a really, really bad trend, and it is growing like crazy. All right, now my big topic, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it right now. Microplastics. We've heard a lot about them. It's kind of been the topic of I'd almost say it was the topic of the year, health-wise, for 2025. A lot of talk about microplastics, a lot of talk about avoiding them. And you absolutely should. Look around your life, and anywhere you have plastics coming in contact with food, try to avoid that. It's very, very difficult to avoid. We have products in the store that are in plastic. If we could avoid that, we would, but it's not that easy, especially with you have to start taking into account shipping costs. If you're not going to use plastic, what are you going to use? Glass is best, but glass is heavy, very breakable, really increases shipping cost. Glass is not very convenient in a truck, so we're probably never going to eliminate plastic completely. We should work to minimize it. Stop drinking out of plastic water bottles. Get a good stainless steel or glass water bottle and a good filter, and filter your own water and drink out of glass or stainless steel. Restaurants are a problem. All cutting boards in restaurants are plastic, which is a mistake, by the way, but they're never going to change that. They claim that plastic is much, much safer because it doesn't harbor bacteria. Well, that's false. It's worse. Wood, they say, oh, wood, you don't want to use wood. It absorbs the bacteria. It does. What they don't tell you, though, is the wood absorbs it and kills it. Plastic, they'll say, oh, but plastic won't absorb the bacteria, which is correct. The first time you use it, that knife makes a scratch and a cut. The cut harbors the bacteria. Doesn't get absorbed into the plastic, but it can live and grow in the cuts and scratches. Thousands of them after you've used the cutting board for just a couple weeks. Restaurants use these things over and over and over and over. You are eating plastic. That is a big offender that people don't think about. So in your own kitchen, get rid of all plastic cutting boards and use wood. Far safer. You're never going to get away from that in a restaurant. So you have to minimize your restaurant usage. Most food these days in restaurants is prepackaged, meaning it's been in plastic and BPA and all those other nasty chemicals as well. So try to eat as much food as possible that hasn't been packaged in plastic. Certainly never reheat stuff in plastic in a microwave. There's lots of ways we can minimize our exposure. In today's world, we're never going to eliminate it unless you decide to go out and live in the woods. I don't know how else to do that. But been doing a lot of research on this, and I have some pretty good ideas on how we can really, really help our body eliminate the plastic that we can't avoid. A couple of detox procedures. I've been talking a lot about the infrared sauna. We're going to talk more about that with detoxing, including detoxing plastics. There's not a ton of evidence on this yet, peer-reviewed anyway, but there is evidence that it absolutely does help. There's another way we could do it with binders, things like activated charcoal. The problem with binders is we are exposed to plastic every day. We can't use binders every day. Binders have problems. They bind to nutrients and carry them out of our body. They bind to supplements and carry out of the body. They bind to medications if you're unfortunate, you're on some. So you have to be very careful with binders. We don't want to use binders long term. We could use an activated charcoal binder in the beginning to maybe do some jump starting, but there are now, we have discovered probiotics, bacteria, very specialized bacteria that bind to microplastics and carry them out of your body. They don't bind to other nutrients. They don't bind to supplements or medications. They specifically bind to microplastics. So I'm doing some research now and looking for a product that we could bring in. It's a fairly new science. I found a couple. One I wasn't really wild about, another one that I'm doing some more research on. If we don't find something on the market that we're really happy with, we may create one. That could be a possibility. I think this could be a really important daily supplement. And again, it's a probiotic. There are other benefits to probiotics. So this could potentially be a blend of good daily probiotics and these very specialized, there's more than one, very specialized probiotics that bind to very specific plastics. This is why I'm not sure if I'm going to find something on the market yet. There's multiple types of plastic, and then there are multiple types of this bacteria to bind to different plastics. So that's one of my big projects for the upcoming year. Here's a question. You can call in and give me your thoughts on this, or you can put it in the chat if you're in the chat room. What if what if we did, I'm thinking about this. I know we're getting close to the time, but our team's pretty good at pulling stuff off. By the way, the team hasn't heard of this yet because I just developed this idea this morning while I was reading a lot of the research I've been putting together on plastics and detox. So we have better testing now. Our new test is very good at picking up toxins, mold toxins, heavy metals, oxalate toxins. So we can identify many of the toxins you might be exposed and overloaded to. And we are developing better and better protocols to clean this up, including maybe these new probiotics. I'm thinking about a New Year's detox challenge. Something we put together, we could have fun with it. We could do a leaderboard kind of thing. Maybe I could even write a quick app that we could use to manage the challenge. Maybe we can throw in some prizes. Maybe we could have some fun with this. I am now a firm believer that if you have cleaned up your diet and you've received all the benefits, the weight loss, the energy levels, no pain, all of that, but you still don't feel completely optimal, here are some of the things that would indicate that you've done a good job on your diet, but there's still some detox work to do. Brain fog, you don't feel like your brain is working properly. That is almost always, in this case, going to be a toxin issue. Fatigue, not having the high energy levels you think you should have. Almost, if you've already cleaned up your diet and you still have these things. If you haven't cleaned up your diet, we always have to start there. But I work with a lot of people who have cleaned up their diet and have some of these things hanging around. Eating a good low-carb diet, not being able to lose weight may very well be a toxic issue. We've always said it's hormones, and it is. It's the toxic burden messing with the hormones, which is another thing we can test for and identify. What are some of the other symptoms? Still have inflammation, even with a really clean diet. There's a couple more. I didn't make a list. If you are experiencing those things and you've got a good clean diet, the next step is a pretty aggressive detox routine. I'm getting more confident in being able to do more aggressive, targeted detox protocols without causing people a lot of discomfort. There's a science behind that, and I've been working on it for quite a while. So it might be fun. Would you be interested in some sort of a detox challenge or not? All right. I was just looking at the chat room to see what's going on. Jerry is appalled at cutting off a skin tag. Jerry, I'm not recommending cutting off skin tags. You're right. He says they're really tough and they hurt like hell. He did it once. I agree. Now, if you have skin tags, that is a sign of insulin resistance, by the way. And when you become more insulin sensitive, your skin tags can actually go away on their own, unless they're pretty well developed, and then they probably do need cut off. And you can do it yourself, but it probably does hurt like hell. So just imagine that's what they're doing in a colonoscopy when they snip off the polyps. They use like a little wire grabber thing. Yeah, doesn't look like fun at all. Scott's got a good idea. Send everything in canning jars, and then we can ferment and can with the jars. That's a great idea. There's some logistical issues to that, but it's a great idea. Danny's got a story about blood transfusions, and no one would answer his question as to where the blood went. Interesting. 7 pints of blood, 2 separate times. Yikes. Jerry, high blood pressure, the question mark. Yes, Jerry, absolutely. Thank you. That was another one that should have been on my list. High blood pressure that won't resolve with all the other things we talk about. If you're already eating a clean diet, and you are taking Cardio Miracle, and you still have high blood pressure, very well may be a toxic overload somewhere. All right. Let me know what you think about the challenge idea. That'd be something you would be interested in. And if so, I can start working on that. Maybe it wouldn't be right away at the beginning of the year. We'll see. But it might be kind of a fun way to kick off the new year. Maybe we'll make it interesting. And in the beginning, we'll shoot for the sardine fast. Maybe we do a 3 or 4 day sardine fast to kick off the detox. We'll see. Hi, I'm Kevin Rutherford. If you like this video, hit like and subscribe or leave a comment below. It really helps us get the show out to more people. If you'd like to get the show, the full show, ad-free, you can sign up with the link below.